History remembers many names, but few resonate through the ages like Christopher Columbus. He is a figure synonymous with exploration, ambition, and controversy. Columbus dared to dream of lands beyond the known horizons. His voyages weren't just across oceans, they were expeditions into the unknown. Columbus's tale is one of bravery and miscalculation. He connected Europe and the Americas, altering the course of history forever. His journeys unveiled new lands, new cultures, and new opportunities. To fully grasp Columbus, we must delve into all facets of his legacy. Picture a time when the Americas were absent from European maps. The vast Atlantic was a barrier, a mystery waiting to be unraveled. This was the 15th century world. Europe stood on the brink of transformation. The Renaissance was flourishing, sparking a thirst for knowledge and exploration. Trade routes to the east were essential. Spices, silks, and other treasures flowed from Asia to Europe. But these routes were long, perilous, and often controlled by middlemen. Columbus entered this world with a bold idea, sailing west across the Atlantic. Driven by his beliefs, he set sail regardless. Christopher Columbus was born in Genoa, Italy, in 1451. Picture the lively port city, teeming with activity, the air filled with the scent of the sea. Genoa was a significant trading center on the Mediterranean coast. This energetic atmosphere profoundly influenced young Christopher. He was immersed in a maritime culture, surrounded by tales of exploration. His father, Domenico, worked as a wool weaver and shopkeeper. Columbus's true passion was the sea. It beckoned him from a young age. Even as a boy, Columbus showed a keen interest in geography, astronomy, and navigation. He was captivated by Marco Polo's adventures to the east, which fueled his imagination. By his early teens, Columbus was already sailing on merchant ships across the Mediterranean. Life at sea was grueling, a realm of sun-drenched decks and salt-sprayed faces. Columbus swiftly demonstrated his prowess as a sailor. He became adept at navigating by the stars and leading a crew. His journeys took him through the vibrant trade routes of the Mediterranean. He exchanged goods with merchants from distant lands, absorbing stories of far-off places. One particular journey was transformative. In 1476, I joined a fleet of merchant ships destined for northern Europe. Calamity struck off the coast of Portugal. The fleet was ambushed by privateers. I managed to reach the shore near Lisbon, Portugal, forever altered by the ordeal. In the late 15th century, Portugal was a nation driven by the spirit of exploration. Prince Henry the Navigator had founded a school of navigation, expanding the horizons of the known world. Portuguese sailors were charting new territories further south along the African coast. Young Columbus, inspired by Portugal's adventurous spirit, I decided to settle in Lisbon. I immersed myself in the city's vibrant maritime community, refining my skills as a cartographer. While in Portugal, I married Filipa Moniz Perestrello, which granted me access to invaluable maps and seafaring knowledge. Young Columbus. I delved into ancient texts and carefully charted potential routes across the uncharted seas. This unwavering conviction, despite widespread skepticism, would define my life's mission. Columbus, filled with determination, approached the Portuguese court with his ambitious proposal. He outlined his vision, a westward journey across the Atlantic to reach the Indies. King John II, although intrigued, remained skeptical. His advisors contended that Columbus significantly underestimated the Earth's circumference. After extensive deliberation, the Portuguese court ultimately dismissed Columbus's proposal. Unfazed, Columbus turned his attention to Spain. In 1486, he presented his plans to King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. They were deeply involved in the Reconquista, with their resources heavily committed. Finally, in 1492, with the Reconquista concluded, Queen Isabella agreed to finance Columbus's expedition. It was a bold decision that would forever change the course of history. On August 3, 1492, Columbus embarked on his historic voyage from Palos de la Frontera in Spain. He led 3 ships, the Niña, the Pinta, and his flagship, the Santa Maria. The crew, totaling just over 90 men, included experienced sailors, adventurers, and even convicts. Sailor. The early days were marked by the routine of maritime life. However, as the days stretched into weeks, uncertainty began to set in. The endless expanse of the ocean was daunting. The crew's restlessness grew, and whispers of dissent became more frequent. Sailor Columbus, facing the threat of mutiny, remained resolute, urging us to continue. He understood that turning back would signify failure.
Tierra, tierra, land, land.
After over 2 months of navigating the vast ocean, a shout echoed from the crow's nest of the Pinta. The exhausted crew, teetering on the brink of hopelessness, burst into joyous celebration. Columbus had silenced his doubters. On October 12, 1492, Columbus set foot on an island he named San Salvador. He raised the Spanish flag, claiming the territory for King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. Convinced he had reached Asia, he referred to the native people as Indians. Columbus depicted the island as a paradise, abundant with lush vegetation and welcoming natives. The sight of gold reinforced Columbus's conviction that he had found the fabled riches of the East. Driven by his quest for gold and spices, Columbus embarked on further explorations. He navigated from island to island, discovering new cultures and breathtaking landscapes. On the island of Hispaniola, he believed he had found a land rich in gold. He founded a small settlement called La Navidad, leaving behind a contingent of men. Columbus returned to Spain as a celebrated hero. His arrival in Barcelona was greeted with great fanfare and celebration. He presented King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella with exotic parrots, gold ornaments, and several Taino natives. His voyages had unveiled a new world, previously unknown to Europeans. Columbus's return sparked immense excitement and curiosity in Spain and across Europe. The Spanish crown swiftly organized a second expedition for Columbus. In 1493, Columbus set sail again, this time commanding a grander fleet. He transitioned from an explorer to a leader, expanding Spanish territories. This second journey significantly altered Columbus's interactions with the New World. The relentless quest for wealth and Spanish dominance led to tensions and exploitation. Columbus's impact became closely linked to the broader effects of European colonization in the Americas. What fueled Christopher Columbus? It was a powerful blend of ambition, faith, and an unyielding desire to leave a lasting legacy. Picture yourself in my position. It's the 15th century. The world seems smaller, yet brimming with rumors and legends, stories of unknown lands, of spices that could bring immense wealth, of cultures vastly different from your own. From a young age, Columbus was enthralled by these stories. He immersed himself in books about geography, astronomy, and exploration. For Columbus, the sea wasn't merely a vast expanse of water. It symbolized adventure, fortune, and the opportunity to carve his name into history. One of the most significant influences on Columbus was the legendary explorer Marco Polo. Polo's book, The Travels of Marco Polo, described his incredible journey to the court of Kublai Khan. Polo's descriptions of the East were filled with exotic details, magnificent cities, opulent palaces, and unimaginable riches. Columbus, like many of his contemporaries, was captivated by Polo's tales. He studied Polo's book meticulously, making notes in the margins. Columbus also had access to maps and charts that were unknown to Polo. He studied the works of ancient geographers and corresponded with contemporary scholars. Columbus became convinced that a westward voyage across the Atlantic would be the shortest route to the Indies. One of the most significant influences on Columbus was the legendary explorer Marco Polo. Polo's book, The Travels of Marco Polo, described his incredible journey to the court of Kublai Khan. Polo's descriptions of the East were filled with exotic details, magnificent cities, opulent palaces, and unimaginable riches. Columbus, like many of his contemporaries, was captivated by Polo's tales. He studied Polo's book meticulously, making notes in the margins. Columbus also had access to maps and charts that were unknown to Polo. He studied the works of ancient geographers and corresponded with contemporary scholars. Columbus became convinced that a westward voyage across the Atlantic would be the shortest route to the Indies. One of the most significant influences on Columbus was the legendary explorer Marco Polo. Polo's book, The Travels of Marco Polo, described his incredible journey to the court of Kublai Khan. Polo's descriptions of the East were filled with exotic details, magnificent cities, opulent palaces, and unimaginable riches. Columbus, like many of his contemporaries, was captivated by Polo's tales. He studied Polo's book meticulously, making notes in the margins. Columbus also had access to maps and charts that were unknown to Polo. He studied the works of ancient geographers and corresponded with contemporary scholars. Columbus became convinced that a westward voyage across the Atlantic would be the shortest route to the Indies. Columbus's motivations were deeply intertwined with his personal ambitions. He sought fame, fortune, and a lasting legacy among the great explorers of his time. In his appeals to the monarchs, Columbus highlighted the potential economic gains of his journey. He proposed a new trade route to the east, circumventing the established paths. Yet, Columbus's aspirations extended beyond mere wealth. He believed he was on a divine mission, chosen by God to discover new territories and spread Christianity. This belief fortified him through years of setbacks and refusals, ultimately empowering him to undertake his daring voyages into the unknown. Religion was the cornerstone of life in 15th century Europe. The Catholic Church wielded significant power and influence. Columbus, a devout Catholic, viewed his expeditions as a mission to spread Christianity. His journals are filled with references to God and his religious convictions. Columbus considered himself a missionary, aiming to bring salvation to the indigenous peoples. Unfortunately, his fervor resulted in forced conversions and the exploitation of Native Americans. Centuries have passed since Christopher Columbus first set foot on that fateful Caribbean shore. The world he encountered was not the one he had envisioned. It was not the East, but a new land, rich with its own ancient cultures and civilizations. His voyages, though based on a miscalculation, forever altered the trajectory of human history. Columbus's name, once a symbol of daring exploration and limitless opportunity, is now inscribed in a complex historical narrative. He is both praised and criticized, his legacy a multifaceted tapestry woven from threads of bravery, ambition, error, and sorrow. Some view him as a visionary, a man who dared to challenge the boundaries of the known world and opened up new horizons for exploration, trade, and cultural exchange. They highlight the profound impact his voyages had on global interconnectedness, forever linking the continents and initiating an era of unprecedented globalization. Others denounce him as a precursor to colonialism, exploitation, and the devastation of indigenous populations. They argue that his arrival in the Americas set off a chain of events that led to the enslavement, displacement, and cultural destruction of countless native peoples. It's impossible to fully grasp the modern world without recognizing the monumental changes that followed Columbus's voyages. The meeting between Europe and the Americas initiated a series of events that reshaped societies on both sides of the Atlantic. The Columbian Exchange, involving the transfer of plants, animals, ideas, and diseases between the Eastern and Western hemispheres, dramatically altered global demographics, agriculture, and culture. The introduction of crops such as potatoes, tomatoes, and corn revolutionized diets and farming practices in Europe and Asia. The influx of gold and silver from the Americas spurred the rise of European empires and financed further exploration and conquest. New trade routes emerged, linking continents and fostering global commerce on an unprecedented scale. However, this exchange was far from balanced. European diseases such as smallpox and measles devastated indigenous populations who had no immunity to these foreign pathogens. The forced labor of enslaved Africans, brought to the Americas to work on plantations, fueled the growth of colonial economies at a tremendous human cost. In recent years, a significant movement has emerged to reassess Columbus's legacy. Historians, community leaders, and educators are scrutinizing his actions and their enduring impacts. Many advocate for replacing Columbus Day with Indigenous Peoples Day to honor those who lived here long before Columbus. Statues of Columbus are being re-evaluated or removed, igniting discussions about collective memory and historical justice. This re-evaluation is part of a larger dialogue about colonialism, systemic racism, and understanding our collective past.